If you'd rather go way above and beyond on a client project than do a little bit of sales and marketing work, if you're more interested in crunching numbers than shaking hands, if you think networking should be about routers rather than cocktails with strangers, but somehow you ended up with sales and marketing responsibilities, this podcast is for you. Hi, Chief Nerd Ruben Swartz here, and I spent a long time learning these lessons the hard way. I want to help you learn them the easy way by sharing my experiences and talking with brilliant people who have figured out how to hack not just the code, but the sales and marketing process as well. Of course, as a nerdy person, I had to create a software application to help service-oriented people get more clients. So if you'd like to get more leads and turn more of them into clients and break out of the feast or famine cycle, check out Mimiran.com. That's Mimiran.com. You can find the application and also sample lead magnet and contract templates to help you grow your business. Now let's get to it. Today, I'm super excited to have Joy Beatty, Vice President at C-Level, a professional services firm that helps companies define software that people actually love to use and that actually deliver the intended business value. Joy has a ton of background here. She's the author, like a lot of people on this podcast, but her books include Visual Models for Software Requirements with C-Level CEO Tony Chen, and Software Requirements, 3rd edition with Carl Weggers. That's from Microsoft Press. It kind of reminds me of Code Complete, if anyone's old enough to remember that up on the bookshelf. She's contributed to the Project Management Institute's Guide to Business Analysis and a whole lot more project management and requirement stuff. And she recently was put in charge of sales at C-Level. And I thought that would be the perfect occasion to get her on Sales for Nerds. And Joy reluctantly agreed, but she put a pretty tough condition on this interview. Joy, do you want to explain what that is?
Yeah, I told Ruben, I've heard all of these other podcasts, and I am not a red wine drinker. I only like rosé, which is probably extreme. I don't only like rosé, but if we were to have rosé, which I know is like pulling teeth for you, right?
Yeah, kind of. Especially in December. It's one thing if it's August and it's 103 degrees.
I mean, it's Austin. It could be 100 degrees. It's not. Something. Yeah. So we're doing rosé.
And Joy brought this M.A. Rocasson. Am I saying that right?
I have no idea.
M.A. Rocasson Côte de Provence 2017 Cuvée Sélectionnée.
It sounds really great when you say it that way.
All right.
I do. It's French. I like French rosés. I like Italian rosés. I like rosés in general. What I will say, Ruben, is had you a year ago done this with me, we would have had far worse wine because rosés are kind of new to me in the last year.
Wait, it would have been worse?
Yeah. Don't make that face. They can't see that face.
Did you drink all the boxes? What happened?
Oh, that's a good one. It wasn't. No, I traditionally, I liked sweeter wines.
Okay.
So I was a big fan of like the Rieslings.
Okay.
And then over time I was like, wow, this is just really sugary, just sweet. A little too sweet. Now you can get dry Rieslings, and I do like those still. And we had this problem. My best friend and I, she's a Chardonnay drinker. I was a Riesling drinker. We don't like each other's wines. So we tried to meet in the middle and we found rosés.
Okay.
Which now we just kind of experiment with rosés, new ones all the time.
No Sauvignon Blanc or anything like that?
No.
Okay.
No. I feel like you made a face at my rosé.
Yeah, a little bit.
A little bit of a face.
A little bit of a face.
That's okay. There's only but most of a bottle left to keep going.
And I have to give Joy some credit here because she is not having anything to drink this week leading up to the holidays except for this rosé that she's sharing with me. So
I'm
thanks
like
for
on a
doing
complete
that. Cheers.
detox, but for you, Ruben, just don't tell anyone.
All right. Don't worry. Nobody's listening. So Joy, let's rewind a little bit back before you were running sales quite successfully. How did you end up here? How did you get into sales? You don't seem like, even compared to most of the people on this podcast, none of whom set out to run sales.
Right.
You probably wouldn't be the person that we would expect to do that.
No, I would not be. And, as you say that, I'm going to pause for a minute and say, does anybody grow up wanting to be a sales person? I don't even know. Is that a thing?
Not yet.
It might be. Anyway, it's not me. It's not what I dreamed of when I grew up. Let's run sales. Not at all. My passion, really how I got into what I was doing at C-Level at all is I was really passionate about working with stakeholders and users and understanding what do they need their software to do. That's something for as long as I've known you, that's something that's exciting to me. And so that was my background around, they're putting a lot of money into these software projects. How do we make sure that we're actually solving a real problem with the project? And so that is what I did for many, many years. With that though, it's kind of interesting. Like I hate to admit it, but I'm actually having a lot of fun doing what I'm doing right now. And I think it's because I don't see myself in sales. What I see myself as a problem solver.
Okay.
And so to me, it kind of translates a little bit, right? It's the customer needs to solve a problem. If I can help solve the problem, awesome. I'm going to help solve the problem. That looks a lot like selling a deal, right?
Okay.
And if I can't solve the problem, I tell them that. And we walk away and are still friends, and it's just not a big deal. If they don't feel like we're the right fit, it's not a big deal. Like we just set the framework, and I can talk a little bit more about that, but we set the framework up where it's really safe to just say no and to walk away from something, which takes the pressure out of it. So that's a very high level way of saying I don't feel like I'm doing sales, and that's probably why it's working. Excellent.
Very good. And I guess just for folks who may be confused about this, who haven't spent a lot of time in the enterprise software world, what C-Level does, you've heard probably about some of these disastrous software projects where they spend $500,000 or $500 million and it's over budget and it's late. And then after they finally get it done, it doesn't actually do what it's supposed to do.
It didn't solve the problem they were trying to solve, or the users don't adopt it. Doesn't work like they wanted. It could be anything, right? So
in a past life, I've been involved in projects like this. Yes. And so there is actually, like, it seems so strange. Like, of course, if you're spending all this money, why wouldn't it do what you wanted? But it gets very complicated.
But the studies out there are showing still that most projects, like higher than 50%, and depending on the study, you'll see different numbers, but higher than 50% of projects are still failing, which is mind-blowing to me that we're not better at it.
Right.
It's also fascinating. Like, I want to solve that problem too.
These people haven't read your book, obviously.
I'm sure that's probably what it is.
So we'll have a link to Joy's books in the show notes, obviously. But it's interesting because it seems like for a lot of these things, it can't be an easy sell. They're spending a whole bunch of money. They're probably telling whoever's implementing the software, can't you guys just make this work? Why should we spend extra money on these other people, right? Like, it doesn't seem like a thing where you just walk in and say, obviously you need this extra thing.
Yeah. And I'll say over the years, I very consistently see companies are shortcutting, I want to say, the amount of money that they spend on doing the requirements work, which is traditionally what our work would have been called: business analysis, requirements, product management, call it what you want. In Agile, it's product ownership. Companies are like just cutting that budget as much as they can, which is interesting because many people have said this in the industry, and you'll hear it out there. But, and Carl Weirs likes to say this a lot, which is, why is it you are willing to spend the money later to fix it, but you're not willing to spend the money to get it right in the first place?
It feels like they're not doing quote unquote real work.
Yes.
When they're defining
that's
what
exactly
they should do.
I think that's what it is. The other thing is, a lot of companies feel like they should have that talent in-house, that their own people should be able to define what they need to do, put that to paper, get it delivered. But the reality of it is the skill set that is needed to do that well, it's not necessarily something you're going to find in your subject matter experts, your business stakeholders. They don't have that analysis, that I would say the patience to analyze it to the depth that they would need to, or even to know how much they should look at something or look at something. So that particular skill set doesn't exist usually in business stakeholders. And in the technology side of things, your developers want to write code. They don't want to do this. There are people out there that have the job title that do what we do. And so there absolutely are roles out there like that. And sometimes they're harder to fill than others, is what I've seen. So that's how we have made a business for almost 20 years now, is simply being able to help solve that problem for a lot of our customers. The other thing I'll say, going back kind of down the sales path for a minute, I think a lot of what we have done for many years, right? We've created a methodology approach around how to understand the requirements for a particular project, to get to the right requirements. And that, if you step back a layer, is really just putting a process to paper, right? And so I need to get from point A to point B, and here's the logical steps to go through, and here's the different paths I might have to take. Here are the things I would measure along the way, right? So when sales fell in my lap on that very lucky day, I stopped think about it, and I'm like, well, how am I going to do this? Well, that's the one thing I feel like I can do, is put a process in place. And I think that for many years we didn't have that process, and that's probably why we were less successful in the past. And so it's about figuring out, here are things that we need to do. Here are the things we need to do in every single meeting with every single customer. Here's some things that are negotiable. Maybe you don't have to always do them, but like putting those pieces of the process in place that then the team can follow.
So you basically started doing what you do for your clients for your own company internally.
Sure. Yep. Yeah.
Except that the process was your sales process.
That's right. And I have actual process flows now, which is probably rare for companies to have process flows for their sales process.
How much of this cool process flow can we share?
That's interesting. I probably could extract something out of that we could share. I don't feel like it's anything top secret or that
Because it would
special.
be super cool to have the, official requirements
approach to sales
flow of whatever.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm right now in the midst of creating that on the marketing side as well. So the marketing that flows into the sales.
So marketing fell into your lap as well?
It did.
Congratulations.
All of a few weeks ago. That is now also and it's the same thing. It's, I look back and I say, do I really know that much about marketing or sales now? Probably not. I wasn't formally trained in any of this. I guess I did have some training in the sales stuff 2 years ago, but generally speaking, you go out and you solve people's problems and then you just step back and think about, okay, what am I doing? What works? What doesn't work? And put that to paper and then help others execute the same thing.
Now you said you had sales training a couple of years back.
Yes.
Tell me more about that.
So we have, our entire company has gone through the Sandler approach. And that would be something, if you want, we can share that link as well.
Cool. We've actually had a couple of Sandler trainers on the show.
Adam,
yeah.
Great. Okay. So Adam did some of our training. What was that?
When we drank Bordeaux with Adam.
Yes, we should just keep drinking our rosé though. Cheers to that, Ruben.
Cheers. Sorry, as you were saying, you went through Sandler.
So we did go through that. And Adam actually did some of our training. So we actually went all in, as in we just decided they were going to help us hire into the VP of sales position. They helped, we put our, at the time, account management / sales team through the Sandler training, the full boot camp. And then we put all of our consultants at the senior level through Sandler training. And it's not because I expect them to do selling. It's because the techniques that Sandler teaches are fantastic at helping people solve problems. And that is what we do every day with our customers. And then we had a management version of the curriculum that we went through. And so we did that. And it took us, I don't remember the time, but it was less than a year, but quite a long time that we spent doing training with them. And so I didn't go through the full boot camp, but I went through effectively what the consultants went through and then the management team's version of that to really understand like the techniques. I think of it as Sandler is just giving you a whole bunch of tools to put in your toolbox.
Okay.
Very much like I would describe in the requirements space. All of our models are all just different tools to put in your toolbox. And I think some of the challenge is knowing what tool to pull out at the right time.
And that's where your process flow comes in?
In theory, yes.
Okay.
Sometimes in practice.
I was going to ask how the Sandler stuff meshed with the process flow. And it sounds like...
Yeah, absolutely. There's pieces of it. I can give you an example of this is that every single sales meeting that we have, call in person, doesn't matter what it is. Are you cringing at the wine?
I'm sorry. I
wish y'all could see this. He is not enjoying this.
I'm working on it. I'm trying to be open-minded. It's really nice. It's just a little bit sweet, I think, for me.
Oh, I know. And it's not that sweet to me. It's perfect.
Do you need some more?
I do need some more.
All
here.
Right.
Listen in, everyone. Excellent.
I want to keep trying.
Since I'm not drinking this week, except for you, I'm going to go ahead and drink with you.
There we go. All right.
So I've lost my thought. Oh, right. Sales calls. So when we do sales calls, something that's really important to me that when we start a meeting, and it doesn't have to be I'm trying to sell something in the call. It's any kind of a customer stakeholder type meeting. I start with, just obviously, hello, thank you for joining kind of thing. But one of the things that we do that Sandler has taught us is what we call this upfront contract, right? And you've probably heard about this, but the idea
Go into it for folks who haven't.
Yeah. So from Joy's version of how I would describe that is you are very, like at the very beginning of the call, setting an agreement about how this is going to play out, which could look like at the end of the call, they tell you you're not a fit. I don't want to talk again. It could look like, and here's what we're going to decide on for next steps or whatever other path is appropriate. And I will tell you, there is something just like when this particular tool fell into our laps, into our toolbox, and I started to use it, it is oddly refreshing to be able to go into a call. Like historically, I just dreaded going into sales calls. I would go with our salespeople to sales calls and I would get this anxiety about what if I say the wrong thing? I don't know. Like, what if we're not right? I don't want to force this. And to be able to start the call with, and at the end of this meeting, you might decide we're not a good fit. And it's okay to just tell us that. It's just like freeing almost. It just takes the pressure off that. And also there's the opportunity for us to say we're not a good fit for them. And we've done that. I just did it last week. I walked away from a very, very big opportunity because I didn't feel like we were going to solve their actual problem. And it's all about setting that agreement up front that this may happen at the end of it. So one, they're not surprised if you decide you're not a fit for them. And secondarily, if you keep saying that to them every single time, they're going to be okay saying no to you.
And that's one of the hard things, right? Because people don't like
they don't want to say no. That's exactly right. They feel bad.
And that's the worst thing.
Terrible, right? Nobody wants to waste anybody's time. And they don't think of it like that. They're thinking, oh man, I really wish I could help this person and buy their thing, whatever it is. And I just don't want to say no, but everybody just appreciates a no if it's a no. And it doesn't mean we can't still talk about other things. And
right.
This particular one last week was fun. It was really fun for me. I came out of my office so excited because I had just walked away from something huge that felt great to walk away from it. But I said that to the guy. I'm not going to go into the details of what it was and the odd chance he was listening to this. But, and it was funny. One of my team members was in the call with me and he said to me, he's like, Joy, I think he was going to cry in that call when you said you wanted to opt out, basically. That's not how I said it. But when I said to him, like, I really would not feel good about you spending, like, I can go build the thing you're asking for and it's going to cost a lot of money. And I feel like I would be wasting your money because I don't think that's the thing that's going to solve your actual problem. It was interesting because, he did seem, I think, taken aback and surprised by that to some degree. But what I offered to him was, but we can still stay in touch. Like, I know there's some other vendors that can help you and they can help you for a lot less money than we can help you. Take myself out of the equation. I can help you evaluate, give you my opinion on them because I'll know them in the industry, right? And so I love that I'm able to offer that, help people without them feeling, pressure to buy or feeling bad about saying no or anything like that. So it's just, I don't know, it's oddly refreshing.
So this is kind of like the pivot from, you're going from a problem-solving, technical-ish role to a sales role. And then at least what happened to me when I tried to do that was I was all out of my element and very uncomfortable and felt awful. And I kind of had to do a full revolution to go back to the problem-solving role just at the business level. Yeah. And then I could just be myself again. Not that I knew how to do everything, but I could, I felt like I was in the right mindset. And it sounds like you're in a similar spot.
For sure. And I can distinctly remember sitting there with Tony when he was talking to me about, I think you should run sales. And I'm like, well, that seems like a terrible idea. I hate sales. I don't like to do sales. I don't really like people in sales. And I think I very quickly, with his help, got to that space of, well, you kind of do it every day anyway. You're just out there helping people solve problems. And so when framed that way, that I can help with, that I can do.
When I I hadn't thought of it this way. And this is one of my favorite parts of this whole podcast because I get to learn stuff and just a different way of thinking about things. And I tend to think about things fairly technically. And so this notion of there's this flow diagram basically of what's happening and every input leads to some state and it has to have some kind of defined set of outputs. And I think that's the thing that catches a lot of people when they start doing sales is you get into these nodes that just kind of loop back on themselves. And you don't know how to get out of them and you don't know how to shut them down. Yeah. Because you don't get that hard no. Yeah. You don't know how to advance them. And so you kind of spin your wheels and you work really hard and get really stressed.
So do you know, that reminds me of another one of my favorite little tools out of Sandler. Do you know the close the file? This is brilliant. The close the file technique.
Is that when you say, hey, I'm about to close my file. Just wanted to check if I could do that.
Basically, yeah. So the idea behind it is if you have somebody who it feels like they're kind of stringing you along and they're not comfortable saying no, and you can do a light press on that to try and be like, I feel like you're really just not wanting to go down this path. You can go down that path. But what we actually do, it's called a close the file. You can send an email, you can do it verbally, but tends to be over email because we haven't heard from someone in a while, where it basically says, I haven't heard from you in a while. And usually there's only a few reasons that happens. And we all know what they are, right? This isn't the right solution. This isn't a priority anymore. I went on a 3-month vacation. Could be anything, right? But there's only a handful of things it could be. So you list out a few things and you say, and I'm going to assume at this point it's probably one of these and I'm going to close the file. If something changes, let me know. It is crazy the number of people that respond to that say, no, wait, don't close my file. And it restarts the conversation. And it's not meant to be a threat. It's simply like, I don't want to waste your time. I mean, every time I bug you with an email, it's one more thing for you to have to read and delete, right? So let me just get out of your way. And it can be, I'm going to reach out in 3 months to check how your thing's going. It's not that you have to forever forget them. But anyway, we get a lot of responses. And a lot of times people are like, absolutely, yes, this is not the right time. Or we went a different direction. It gets you out of that cycle very quickly. One way or another, I almost always get out of the cycle. And if they don't respond to that, we do actually just close the file.
Right.
So then they go into a different state. So
I think that's another Sandler thing. It's like the job of sales is to sort people. It's not to convince somebody to move into a different bucket.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And it comes down, it's interesting. Like, I think some of our team, when they went through the Sandler training, still felt like, wow, it seems very mechanical, impersonal, but it's not. Like, we're still being us in the middle of it, trying to actually solve a problem. But if you're not comfortable telling me no, and I can't solve your problem, then I'm going to help you say no. That's all that is.
Well, I think anytime someone says, and I've looked at some of the Sandler materials, and there's like a script, and the script is not in your voice, so it seems really mechanical, but you can say the same thing and convey the same idea in your own.
You have to use your own words. That's exactly right. The minute you don't, they know it. And and that gets back to the people at C-level who have had the most success over the years in sales. Most of them tend not to be sales in their background. They are actually some kind of a consulting type role. And so that gets to, I think, one of the, like, when I'm out hiring into this role, I'm looking for someone. I'm not so interested in sales experience. I'm more interested in how they have dealt with stakeholders, particularly enterprise type customer stakeholders. Because what happens, after many, many years of consulting, you know how to be you and show up and talk to your stakeholders. Mm-hmm. If you didn't, you're in the wrong field probably, right? So just bringing that voice to everything we do, right? I sound very different than the other people on my team sound because they each sound like themselves from their own experiences. And I think that's important.
But they're all trying to take care of the customer.
Yeah. And we're all using the same kinds of techniques with a different voice, same end goal.
Okay. So how long would it take somebody who's maybe not an expert, who's written several books on this subject, to put together a process flow for their sales process, do you think? I know that's kind of a tricky question. But.
Okay, wait a minute. What were the conditions of that person? They've...
Well, I'm not sure whether it's going to, like, on one hand, it might be bad because they haven't written the book on the subject. And the other thing, it might be really good because they probably don't want to be burdened with 90% of what you know.
Yeah. Yes.
Right. If you're a business owner, you're listening to this and you're thinking, gosh, I should really put together a process flow for my sales cycle.
Yes.
Is that like a, sit down for 15 minutes and draw 3 circles and 4 arrows? Or is it like spend a month on an offsite with your team?
Oh gosh. Yeah. It's more towards the 15 minutes than a month. And I will also tell you is something we have been evolving over literally a year. We work on it a little bit here and there. Honestly, I would start with sticky notes on a whiteboard.
Okay.
Literally, because, and that is me bringing out the product manager in me, that this is how we help solve our customers' projects, right? So I would start writing on sticky notes. What are the things that your sales team does today or you do today? So it's things like set up meeting, have meeting. Oh, wait, I need to prep for meeting. That's why you do it on sticky notes, because you're not going to get them all in the right order the first time.
Okay.
Right. And if you don't prep for meetings, I think you probably should. That's something that we find a lot of people don't do naturally, but adds tremendous value, even if it's 15 minutes before the call, to get your head in the game about what am I talking about? What's my objective? Those kinds of things. So anyway, at that top level, you're just putting the sticky notes down and you can start to arrange them in the order that they happen. And then you can start to think about what is required, what's not required. We actually have multiple levels of process flow. So there's that top level I think of as account management, where sales is just one aspect of it.
Okay.
And I would say that is probably more of why we were successful than anything, is that we come in with this attitude of we're going to help the account and help our customer be successful, not go just try and sell a particular deal to them. And so that's, how do I market into that account? Or do I? Maybe I don't need to. Great. I do have a sales opportunity. So then I have a whole sales process that I go through.
And how do you define whether you have an opportunity?
So we have explicit definitions for what defines an opportunity. Look, and I can show you my cheat sheets that I have. That talks about, like, I carry these things
She's
around.
handing me an actual cheat sheet.
I'm actually handling a cheat sheet. So those are our opportunity stages that talk about, okay, I have a suspect opportunity. Somebody came and told me about a potential project. I may have never had a customer conversation about it, but I track it. We use Salesforce, but we track it in the system to say, okay, I know there's this thing out there and I need to go talk to somebody about it, so I don't forget about it. And so at that point, it now enters into our sales process, which could kick out of the sales process very quickly. Is not a real thing, and that's okay. And then outside of that sales process, we have process steps, which then get broken out into more detail around maybe how do I expand the account? How do I just in general strengthen the relationships with the people in that account? There are specific kinds of things that we are attentive to doing and making sure we do them on some kind of a cadence, just to continue to build rapport and get to know more people or get to know them at a deeper level.
You guys are obviously a little different than the typical company in terms of I'm trying to find I mean this in a very complimentary way. It's like how I aspire to be, but it's very OCD.
Yeah.
Right. Like everything has a diagram. And that's kind of, it doesn't sound like I'm being complimentary, but I really am. Right. I want to be that person whose desk is neat and who has a defined next steps for everything. How much pushback do you get from salespeople around, gosh, I don't want to have to, that there's too many constraints. There's too many steps. Let me just pick up the phone and call people.
Yeah. So the answer to that is 0.
Okay.
And in our case, if we were getting that kind of pushback, they're probably not the right fit for our team.
Okay.
That's a really good check on that. And since I have had this team, I have had 0 pushback. I shouldn't say that. I did have someone that was pushing back. I forgot about that. How quickly we forget. So what I will say though, is one of the keys to putting any kind of process, forget sales for a minute, putting any kind of new process in place, the key to get adoption to that is to have them help you build the process. So my team...
Wait, it's almost like what you do for your customers.
It is exactly that, yes. So if I want our sales team to use our process, then they need to help build what the process looks like. And they're reasonable and they know what works and what doesn't work. And there are points along the way where there have been things that we've been doing because we had said we were going to do them. And then we were like, that isn't working. Let's cut it. Let's not do that anymore. And then there's other things that we should be doing. Let's figure out how to put those in place. So it's absolutely critical.
I guess it depends on if you're listening. If you're the kind of person who needs a 98-step checklist, you can do that.
Yep.
If you want the 5-step checklist, you can do it that way, but have some kind of process.
Correct. And most personalities I have found so far in the sales and even marketing roles are probably not going to respond well to a 98-step checklist. Probably can handle the 5 to 20.
Okay.
I will tell you, logging data in the system is probably the area that we have had the most pushback and frustration. We have a saying in our company, which is if it's not in Salesforce, it didn't happen, right? So you can tell me you had 3 meetings yesterday. I look in this tool. If I don't see 3 meetings, they didn't happen. You had 0 meetings yesterday. I don't have any issues now, but that's forever been our mentality about the data has to be there. But then I have to explain to them why I need the data, right? It's not me saying, go check a box because I need you to check the box. It's we use that data to forecast everything for the revenue.
Right.
So again, because we have nice process, we also have lots of data points along the way. And we have so much data historically that we can make assumptions around things like, if I have this many meetings, I can assume that will turn into this many revenue dollars downstream.
Right.
And I'm skipping a lot of steps along the way. So when I explain to them that without you logging your emails, your meetings, whatever, I can't do the forecasting down there, then they get it, right?
Right.
So that leads me to another interesting point that is probably different than what I've seen in most companies is we don't actually have sales targets either. So most salespeople out there, I guess I don't know because I don't really have a lot of experience with this, but I think a lot of them hold a quota, some kind of target that they're trying to hit. And we don't have any. We have forecasts of what we think we're going to do. And those forecasts are based on actual activity levels and what we can do. So for example, I could look at it and say, okay, over the course of a month, we can do 300 emails. I know this many emails turns into a certain number of meetings. That number of meetings turns into a certain number of op dollars, and those number of certain percentage of those will close, right? So I can take that literally emails all the way to close sales. It's just running it by the numbers, right?
Right.
It's very common sense to me. Yeah, I don't think a lot of organizations do this. But again, I have to have the data there to be able to do that. So when I do that, we can then start to forecast, 9 months to a year out, what are we looking at for sales without setting some kind of target that people feel like they're having to, I don't know. I think that when I think about having a target out there, if you're not going to hit the target, that's when people start to get desperate and do silly things.
Okay. So is that why there's no quota?
Yeah.
Okay.
We want to measure things that people can control, which is their activity levels.
Okay.
Also taught to us by Sandler.
Okay.
So yeah, I can put some dollars out there, but the individual doing the activity, first of all, you have more than one person, right? So they have to divide it up and you get into these arguments about who should get what. But I don't know exactly what I have to do to get to that number. Well, the thing is I actually do. And so as managing a sales team, I can look at helping the people say, well, I could back in. To get to that target, you need to do this level of activity. But instead, why don't we look at how much activity can a person reasonably do? And then look at forecast out based on historically what, like this number of emails converts to this number of meetings and so on.
And you can also get together and potentially walk away from a big opportunity because it's not the right fit versus if that's going to bust someone's quota.
Yep. That's exactly right. It motivates very different behaviors, right? It's cool.
So just as a random aside in terms of note taking, because that's always been an issue with me. The other thing, the way I look at it is because I'm not huge into forecasting, which is a whole other issue. But when I go to write a proposal, I want to know what the heck I need to put in the proposal. And if I don't have good notes, it's hopeless.
Okay, yeah.
And so having that record of conversations throughout the sales cycle makes it really easy to be like, oh, here's the real problem they want to solve and here's what they expect to do. And creating that is no stress.
Do you record them?
I do not. I thought about it, but I try to take really detailed notes. And then I tag them. So if someone describes a problem, I literally put P colon.
Oh, great. Yeah.
And so when I search my notes, when I'm writing the proposal, I do P colon, and then it pulls up all the problem statements they made. And
I do star colon for action items.
Okay.
Same kind of thing, right? The notation. We use a call template that we have that somewhat evolved out of some things that we got from the Sandler guys, some our own questions. Historically, predating Sandler, we followed SPIN. Right. Which I feel like maybe 20 years ago, we learned about SPIN together, didn't we? Back in the day?
I didn't read that till much later.
Huh. Okay. Then I'm thinking of something else. But anyway, we did do SPIN, which aligns very closely to what we're doing with Sandler because it's about understanding problems at some level, right?
And hopefully that's what most of these sales techniques are about, right?
I would like to think so. Yet when I look at how people sell,
right,
I think they're reading something I'm not reading.
But in a way, it's really nice because I know for me, I was like, oh gosh, I'm doing sales. All these people have been doing sales for decades. They're going to crush me, blah, blah, blah. And some of them do, right? The ones who are really good.
Sure.
And have experience, obviously they're going to be a lot better, especially because they're doing it all day, every day. But most of them suck.
Yes.
And just caring about the customer, you already stand head and shoulders above them.
You're way above them. Yeah.
So even though you don't have all the right templates and scripts and whatnot, just the fact that you actually care and the customer can perceive that is super helpful.
We had somebody a couple weeks ago. We're about to buy some sales and marketing software. I will again not tell you who it was to protect them, but they reached out to one of my teammates trying to close the deal. And I want to say they must have been trying to close by end of November or end of a month or something like that.
They had a quota.
They must have, because what happened was there was a text, so our guy got a text message from the sales rep that he'd been working with, where that text message was between the sales rep and the manager of the sales team. It was a back and forth about do whatever you need to do to get this closed by that date, offer whatever you need. Basically saying we'll give you whatever you want to sign the deal this month. Sent literally a screenshot of that and sent it to our guy as a tactic to get us to buy. To say, look, it's whatever you want to sign it. And I thought, wow, that makes me really not want to buy their product.
Even at super discount.
Even at a super discount. It was just that is, and the irony is I've told you it's sales and marketing software. So I think it's really interesting that that's the tactic they're using to sell it. So I don't know what book they're reading, but we need to find out and not read that one.
I don't know. I think we should distribute it to competitors.
Or maybe that.
So you've basically taken your expertise and requirements gathering and synthesis and whatever magic you do to make sure that a process actually does what it's supposed to do. You've applied that internally to your own sales process, even though you're not a salesperson.
Right.
And you've massively grown sales.
I would say it's probably not magic. It's just being systematic, but magic works too.
Fair enough. Well, and for people who have no system, a system looks like magic, right?
That's true. Yeah. But I think anyone can step back and say, okay, what did I do today? Let's just start there. What are the things I went through today? Well, great. Put those on your sticky notes. That's the beginning of your process, right? Now look at the whole week. What are the high level things that you've done? Right. So anybody's capable of pulling out a process out of what they've done. Some people are probably not as inclined to naturally just go do that. Some of us like to do that.
Right. So after you've got your sticky notes on the board, maybe you've discussed them with your team. Maybe you don't have a team. You've just got your sticky notes. What do you do? Can you take sticky notes out when you say this stuff isn't really helping me?
For sure.
You add new sticky notes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
At some point, does it go from a sticky note to somewhere else?
Yeah. So I actually pretty quickly moved from sticky notes into any kind of a piece of software. So I have it online. And I will tell you, because our background is in the analysis space and doing requirements work, we use Visio a lot. So I naturally put mine in Visio.
Right.
However, Visio can be a pain to use if you don't use it regularly, even if you do use it regularly. So ours live in Visio, which is kind of funny because the rest of our sales team is having to learn how to manipulate Visio, which is probably not what they dreamed of either. But you can use PowerPoint and just make boxes in a PowerPoint. If you need to collaborate on your team, recently we've been using the Google Slides to collaborate. It's fantastic. It's easy, right? So now we can all be manipulating the process to whatever degree you want. I am a proponent of not locking things down. I'd rather people are able to get in there and just trust they're not going to sabotage your work, or you have revision history if they do, but people don't do that.
Right.
So
I've even done this with Google Sheets where it's like a spreadsheet and you kind of have a main funnel and then people can pass through it at different rates and at different times and different percentages, or they can get out of the funnel into some kind of nurture state or disqualified state.
Yeah,
and I don't know if it's the best looking diagram, but it's helpful because it makes it really easy to say, if we're expecting to do X amount of revenue, what are our upstream
what do we need to be
numbers
doing?
Look like and so on.
That's cool. Yes, I like that. And I think the key is like to put it somewhere that people can see it and have their hands on it if they want to look at it.
And then how do you track day to day or week to week or whatever interval you use, whether it's going according to the process?
So I look at our dashboard. So I've set up a handful of reports and they change probably every 6 to 8 weeks. I change out some of them on my dashboard about what I want to look at. So whatever has got my attention in terms of we're not doing enough outreach activities or expansion activities, let's say, or wow, our meetings, gosh, I feel like our meetings aren't as good as they used to be. Well, I start monitoring that more closely on the dashboard. And so we have a weekly sales meeting. And in that, I actually have an agenda. See, Ruben, I have an agenda for that too. Also on a piece of paper, ready to go. And these are the things in theory I would look at every week. I don't look at it every week, but I periodically look at this to say, okay, here's the questions I'm trying to answer. So that's actually something too that I think I don't know if it's unique or not, but it's something that we do in our software projects with our customers. When they are replacing a system and they need to build reporting functionality into a new system, you will commonly hear, I need these 200 reports. I had them before. I have to have them in the future. And you start to look at the size of the team and you're like, there's no way they're looking at 200 reports. It's like a security blanket to them to have all their reports, right? So one of the techniques that we use in doing requirements on those kinds of projects is to ask them, what decision are you trying to make from the report? Because people don't look at data for fun. They're looking at it to make some kind of decision.
Have you met the people who listen to this podcast?
Do people listen to this podcast?
Both of them like looking at data for fun.
Both of them. Awesome. Okay. Well,
most people,
with the exception of those two people, there was just somebody on the team last week who she's like, I actually do look at the reports for fun. I know you do. Most people don't. Okay. So knowing that most people don't do it, you can ask the question, which is, what decision do you need to make from the report? So I use that in the sales reports too, right? So over the history of time, we probably literally have 1,000 reports that people have built out, and most of those could get deleted and no one would know the difference. I would say that there's probably any one person is probably looking at less than 20 on a weekly basis, probably a few at most, right?
Because you can't process more than that.
That's exactly right. And so I have my dashboard set up with kind of the things that I need to get to fastest on the front page. And then I have these secondary dashboard where maybe once a month or once a quarter, I might go peek and see what's going on with something. Or it's how I quickly get to some report that I need to run on an ad hoc basis, right? But to figure out what kinds of things I wanted to look at in the sales meeting, I'm like, well, what kinds of questions do I want to answer? And so I use that to back into what reports we're looking at.
I think that's a great point, because there's so many ways to generate reports out of data and pretend like you're doing something, almost like you're pretending you're doing sales activities by being in meetings that aren't well defined. You can pretend you're doing sales management, and you might be the person doing both, but you're looking at a report and therefore you're doing sales management versus you're understanding where the bottleneck is and you're taking some kind of action to fix it.
And full disclosure, I have sometimes gotten myself into I have created this really cool report in Salesforce. I'm so excited about it. And I'm like, I don't know what this is telling me. And so then I go next door. I'm like, hey, Therese, can you tell me, what might I be telling? What's the story here? Because I have no idea what I'm doing anymore. That's a great sign that maybe that was the wrong report to build. Right. And to back out of that. Or sometimes she actually can tell me what the report is telling me. It just kind of depends.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's great.
But I think also like the weekly cadence of here's the sales meeting.
Yeah.
Even at like, for me, I'm just me doing sales at my company. Right. But every week I have to have a sales meeting with myself.
You should.
To make sure that I'm staying on top of things. Otherwise.
And you should have for yourself an agenda of here are the things I'm going to check every week. Real quickly, I'm going to skim through this and be like, nope, I fell behind on that last week. Let me do better this week. Right. That's what I would do if I were you.
And well, it's funny because I sort of have like the Monday morning, like here's like the end of funnel sales meeting to make sure I'm closing opportunities that should be closing.
Yep.
And then the theory is that Friday afternoon, I have like the beginning of funnel sales meeting where I'm supposed to follow up with people who are not urgent, but I just need to talk to. And that's the one that I'm not good at actually.
Is that where you're opening your bottle of wine?
No, no, that, I mean, I'd like to blame it on that, but that's not it.
You're just trying to get through the week.
Well, it's like, there's probably some other thing that comes and intrudes
needs to get done.
Whatever.
Yeah.
And so for a while, I didn't even have the Monday meeting. I was like, well, what do I need to keep? I don't need to have a meeting to keep track of this. It's pretty simple. And then I realized if I don't do that, stuff just slips. And I drop balls that I shouldn't be dropping. I
love that you have a meeting with yourself. This morning I had a marketing stand up and there's generally 4 people invited to that. And in it, I feel like I'm drinking this bottle of wine, not you, Ruben.
And I'm helping. I'm really
slowly.
Well,
this is where Joy drinks Ruben under the table.
Again.
No,
I guess what should we be pairing this with? Maybe that's the thing. Like, I feel like if I had this with like, maybe like some salmon or something, it would be really fantastic. Awesome, right?
That would be great.
Okay.
Olives?
You know what's terrible? I love olive oil and I hate olives. And I've been trying, I know that's bad. I've been trying to work on liking olives for decades and I just don't like them.
Have you tried all kinds?
Red,
lots of kinds?
Black, green.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. I'm going to bring you some olives next time. We're going to try.
Why do you do this? But I can see how having some of that olive type oily flavor would help cut this nicely and vice versa.
This is a great, just hypothetically, or speaking from experience, you know, we're about to cook dinner. We haven't cooked dinner yet. We're kind of hanging around the kitchen. Some olives with the pits in them still. They're better. Okay. And green.
Okay.
I like the salmon idea. Maybe even just some almonds.
Yeah.
Yeah. That would be good. Anyway.
Sorry, we totally got off track there.
I know. I had a marketing stand-up this morning. There's 4 people in my stand-up. We meet once a week because we're ramping up my role in marketing. That stand-ups generally, I would like to do them shorter and more frequently, but we get into some pretty big topics still, like big directional topics still. So, but one person was with a family issue, one was sick, and one was a customer. So I was like, that's great. I am happy to spend the half-hour meeting with myself. And I did. I had a meeting with myself. It was phenomenal. It's amazing what you can get done in your own head.
Well, and that's what some people say, right? Like put half of time on your calendar schedule for you.
Yep.
Otherwise, you don't have that. And you wonder, like, I did all this stuff and I was really busy, but I didn't move the needle the way I was expecting. I didn't make those important decisions or whatever it is.
The other thing for me that I need, and I think you and I have talked about this some before, that I am absolutely by definition an introvert. I need a lot of alone time to recover from people talking all day, right? So that's another reason I really need that time on my calendar blocked to like work on something or think about something. Like the last month, I have blocked time on my calendar to do process flow definition. And I love it and I need it. I need it to get the work done, but I also need it to like mentally recuperate.
Right.
So I can do the next meeting.
I don't know if you had this experience, but I'm introverted as well, obviously, and like never wanted to talk to anybody really that I didn't already know. And sales was like the most extreme, excruciating form of talking to people.
Yep.
And I think similar to you, once I decided it wasn't actually selling people, it was just talking to people and trying to help them.
Yeah.
It got a whole lot easier and actually kind of fun.
Yeah.
And I actually really like it. But if I do a whole bunch of it, like everyone was energizing and interesting.
Yeah.
But at some point I'm like, oh man, I just need to like shut the door and not talk to anyone for a little while and like go write some code or do something like very intellectual.
I would love to do it once a week and I can't, but maybe every couple weeks I like to have a day where I can work from home where there's no one around, right? It's really me and I say that unless my husband's working at home and then we have a problem. It doesn't work. But when coordinated correctly, right, I get my quiet time that way where I can get a ton of work done. The other thing is getting on an airplane. I actually get a lot of like heads down quiet time on an airplane. That's crazy efficient for me.
Any tips on how to use that time productively?
Well, do everything you can to get upgraded so you have more space.
Okay.
That doesn't always work, right?
That doesn't work for me these days.
I know. But I queue up like probably I would say 3 to 4 days in advance of me being on a plane. I use a task list very rigorously every day. I use the Outlook task list and I assign tasks to days. And so what I'll do 3 to 4 days out is I know I have a plane ride. I will start throwing tasks into that day that are perfect for a plane ride.
Got it.
Right. Things that maybe don't need a fast internet connection or no internet connection. And so that day I get on the plane, they're right there. I open them up and I have my task list already for that day.
Right. That's been one of the problems. I don't travel nearly as much as I used to, thank goodness. But it's like as more and more stuff moves online, it's actually harder to get. You can't just pull out your laptop on the plane and pick up where you left off. You have to plan a little bit, like you said.
You do. And you have to pay a lot if you want to be online.
Right.
So a lot of the stuff like syncing data to Salesforce doesn't work well online. The connection is just too slow. But I can write a whole bunch of emails even if they don't go out. Get them queued up so when I land and connect
I had a customer complain to me about the speed of my software being terrible and inexcusable and so on. And we were in a meeting and someone else in the team was like, yeah, that's because you were on an airplane.
Oh, well, there you go.
And I was like, okay, I feel better now.
I don't think that's you, Ruben. I think that might be the plane's connection.
You never know. You never know. I wanted to take it seriously.
Can I share a tip you shared with me?
I shared a tip with you that was useful?
Yeah.
Yeah, please.
You're like, finally, they can hear something good. No, I'm kidding. No, so we met, a month or two ago? We had coffee.
Right.
Okay.
To set up this interview, I badgered you till you finally agreed.
Yeah, I was going to say that was the last badgering technically. I agreed at that point. It was a year prior to that, but here we are. Totally worth it for the rosé, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'm actually warming up to it a little bit. And like just the mental thought of the salmon with this is like really helping.
I know. I kind of dashed out of the kitchen and see if we have any. Doubt it, but
if you've got salmon here, I'm going to put in an application.
Yes, for sure. So we were talking about getting over this energy, this resistance to picking up the phone and calling people or doing outreach to people. At that point was trying to do some more rigorous. I use the word rigor a lot because I do like to actually say like this week I'm going to reach out to 10 people or something like that and really try and hold to that. Right now I'm in let me do it and see how much I can actually do. And then I'll set some kind of activity target. But anyway, we were talking about like, that's hard, right? To get over that. And you said something to me that I thought that was really interesting, which is it's nice to be able to call people when you don't need anything from them and just talk to them and catch up. And it feels so much better. Then one day, if you do need something from them, it doesn't feel so bad because you've been talking to them all along, right?
Right.
So, which now makes me wonder what you're going to need from me that you were talking to me. And anyway.
Dipping into your rosé collection?
Yes. Which is 1 bottle deep because I'm not drinking wine this week. Anyway, so it was funny because I came back and I shared that with my team because as we are doing, like there's people that I have talked to but I maybe haven't talked to in a while, that it sort of feels weird, right? What am I going to say to them? Mm-hmm. I don't really need anything. So I just embrace that. I don't need anything from them. I'm just like, let's talk. And I have had a handful of conversations that came out of I would send an email that just says, hey, I've been thinking about you. If you've got 30 minutes, let's just catch up, right? So I'm not spontaneously calling some of them, but we get on the phone, we have the most interesting conversations. It's just really fun. I don't go in with any kind of outcome I'm looking for, any kind of objective.
Other than catching up with somebody you care about.
Other than catching up. That's exactly right. It's really nice. It's it doesn't feel like sales. It just feels like catching up with people. And so thank you, because it was really helpful to help me get over this block I had.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then I shared it with the team.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I mentioned this when we were talking about this before, but I feel like I have this sort of default switch, which is don't call somebody. Right. Send them an email or just forget the thought flows through your head and you forget about it. But it's definitely not pick up the phone and call. No. And I'm like, what if I just flip that to the default is to call them?
Yes.
And, there's a million voices in my head telling me that's really bad and uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And none of them are actually making a really sound logical argument, but they're making a pretty compelling emotional argument because I don't want to pick up the phone and call people. Right. But I've noticed that when I actually do it, it's so great.
It's rewarding, really cool.
I mean, sometimes it actually leads to business, but even the ones that don't, it's just been such a richer thing because, seeing what somebody posts on LinkedIn or Facebook is not the same as having a 20 or 30 minute conversation or an hour-long conversation with somebody.
That's true. It's so true. And I think I have found out just such interesting things about one woman was going on a surprise vacation. She had no idea where the next day. And it was fascinating because then I had a reason to reach out to her in a week and find out where she went. And I was like, it was so great. And I can genuinely tell you, I don't see that there's any chance of us having any kind of sales opportunity with them anywhere in the near future. And I just really enjoyed talking to her, and it was great. Those are the things that I think, and those are the things probably for you too, I would guess, but have drawn me to consulting my whole career, is that you get to meet really interesting people who do interesting things. Most of them.
Right. It's we're introverted. And so we think we don't want to talk to people.
Yeah.
We just want to talk to people differently.
Right.
I think is the way I've learned about myself.
That's a great way to put it. I'm going to try and use that. It's not that I don't like to talk to people. I like to talk to them differently.
Well, Joy, thank you so much. Thanks for spending your time. Thanks for sharing your precious last bottle of rosé and all your insights. And at some point, we'll have a simplified version of the process flow that people can grab from you.
Sure. That would be, let's do it.
All right. Thanks so much, Joy.
Okay. Thank you, Ruben.
Have a friend who'd benefit from this episode? Pass the word along. Have a friend who wouldn't benefit from this episode, but you haven't talked to in a while? Give them a call. Of course, iTunes reviews are great for getting the word out and also for helping me make the show that you want.
Here's a review from Awesome Guy Person Faux Show. Invaluable expertise. Sales for Nerds never fails to deliver on helping me reflect and rethink how I approach sales and marketing. It's the podcast I've relied on most in terms of moving my business forward. It's hard to pick my favorites, but the David Fields, Mary Lou Tyler, and Jason Cohen episodes were particularly great. Thanks so much, Awesome Guy Person Faux Show. I would say your username is accurate. And if you would be so inclined as to leave a review, that's super helpful in getting the word out. Thanks so much.
So if you've got topics or guests that you want discussed on the podcast or in the apparently upcoming Sales for Nerds book, let me know. And if you want to automate client acquisition, turning more web visitors into leads into conversations, and onto closed deals, while helping you stay in touch with the people who matter, check out Mimiran.com. That's www.mimiran.com. And once again, thanks for listening.